Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is another installment in Top Tarot Trumps hosted by Masha. And in this video, I'll be talking about some favorite Wheel of Fortune cards. I actually thought that it would be harder to find favorite Wheel of Fortune cards than it actually was. I ended up picking 7 cards to share with you. And I'm happy that I found that many that I like, because the Wheel of Fortune is not necessarily a card that stands out to me as usually containing some of my favorite artwork in a deck. It's not one that I, immediately look to get a feel of a deck that I might be considering adding to my collection. It's just not a card that tends to be my favorite in a given deck, really. I don't dislike it, I wouldn't say. It's not a card that necessarily routinely features depictions that I can't stand. It's just one that doesn't stand out in my mind, to be honest. So this was a good way of thinking about what I really look for in a Wheel of Fortune and how I interpret that card. And there are definitely some patterns in the cards that I chose. So I haven't put them in too much of an order. Maybe there's a little bit of a thematic progression in the cards I'm going to share, but there's quite a range, as is often the case in my Top Tarot Trumps videos. I like a lot of different things. So the first one that came to mind immediately to put into this video is from a deck that I have already shown many times in the Top Tarot Trumps series, because it's beautiful and absolutely a favorite. And that is the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot. This is the Wheel of Fortune from the Fyodor Pavlov. And as you can see, it features the goddess Fortuna spinning the wheel. And in each corner, the artist has put kind of elemental depictions of air, water, fire, and earth. And in the guidebook, Fyodor talks about, inserting the figure into this card, a card that typically doesn't have a person or a human appearing figure depicted, to bring back the idea of agency into the card. Fortuna is often thought of, Fyodor writes, as kind of spinning the wheel and leaving things that happen to us up to chance, but putting a human figure in then allows for also thinking about the ways in which we might steer the wheel, we could say. And they also talk about putting the elements in just as something that speaks to them more than, what usually ends up appearing there. So this is a card that I really like. I think it feels quite traditional to me in some ways, but it's also containing some symbolism that we don't tend to see. There are no others in my selection that contain a full human figure, so it is unique in that way. And I really like that card, and I just really love that deck, so of course it's showing up again. Another deck that I love with a Wheel of Fortune that I like for kind of similar reasons, I would say, though it's quite a different image, is the Tarot of the Crystal World by Brooke Penrose. This is, maybe my favorite deck that joined my collection last year, one of them certainly. I really, really like this deck, and as you can see here, if the camera will cooperate, there we go. It includes some hands holding the Wheel of Fortune. And again, I feel like this brings in some of the themes that in the Wheel of Fortune, when it appears in a reading, I like to think about, including, what kind of agency one has in a particular situation, how one can navigate a situation in which, of course, there are things that are, well beyond our control or well out of the querent's control, but that doesn't mean that, one's life is just happening to them and that they can't exercise agency and freedom in various kinds of ways. So I like this depiction for that. And the little white book that comes with this is fairly brief in terms of what it says for each card, but Brooke Penrose does kind of write something like, you know, be open to luck, but also prepared for disappointment. Like things happen that are unexpected and that are out of our control, but also it's, you know, leaving room for that agency and autonomy as well. So I like that card a lot. I also chose the Wheel of Fortune from the Numinous Tarot by Cedar McLeod. This I just really like aesthetically, and I really like the idea of including the 4 suit symbols in the Wheel of Fortune as a way of kind of setting up the visual of that card. So here we have the tomes, which are pentacles in this deck, candles for fire, vessels for water, vials actually, I think it's vials in this deck is for water, and bells are air. And so I really like this choice to include the elements and suits in the Wheel of Fortune for the Numinous Tarot. I also chose the wheel from the Gentle Tarot by Mari in the Sky. This is a beautiful deck. And again, I like the inclusion of the human hands here as giving that nod to human agency, human decision-making in the context of how to kind of engage with the cycles of the wheel, how to engage with and align with, in this case, I think, really natural cycles, since the rest of the card is depicting here plants and flowers and stars. You know, there's a kind of seasonal feel to this that I really like, and it brings to mind, you know, feeling into that kind of wheel of the year or seasonality of the year and navigating that in a good way. So I really like this Wheel of Fortune from the Gentle Tarot as well. Another favorite deck that is going to make lots of appearances in Top Tarot Trumps, of course, is the Naturescapes Tarot by Tina. And this image was taken in Germany. Not all of the images in this deck are kind of known and identified in terms of where the photo was taken, but this one was in Germany. And I just really like the visual of this. I think it's beautiful to find, you know, a photo this perfect for something that depicts, you know, a wheel, and to find that in nature in a kind of unstaged way is, I think, a real accomplishment. And I think that Tina is just so good at curating these decks. It's really extraordinary. I also really like the way that this features reflection. And so there's the kind of sky and trees and that in the top half of the card, and then their mirror reflection in the bottom. I like that this, you know, it feels elemental. It's not as overtly elementally, you know, themed as, say, the one in the Numinous Tarot, but it feels like this kind of earthy, airy, watery kind of depiction that just is really, really beautiful. And maybe there's something here about, you know, reflecting on seasonality and cycles, reflecting on those things that are outside of our control and those things that are. And, you know, the cyclical nature of a wheel, things returning, things being reflected back. I think that this is just a really great image. So I really like this Wheel of Fortune as well. Finally, I chose one that is just called Wheel, and this is Wheel from Tarot of the North Atlantic. And this is a really cool deck that is embroidered. So you can see the stitching when you look up close at these cards. And I just think utilizing representations of lunar cycles in a wheel card is brilliant. I think it makes complete sense. And it, you know, brings in aspects of timing and of predictability and of emotion that the moon is associated with. Of course, the whole deck is a very watery deck focused on the North Atlantic Ocean and those who live there. But this just feels like quite a magical wheel to me. And again, I think it brings in the themes of agency for me, in that I can think about how, the moon has its cycles, the moon will wax and will wane. This is not something that, I can have any control over in terms of the context in which I exist, but it is something that I can work with. It's something that I can observe. It's something that I can align myself better with. It's something that I can understand better if I take the time. It's something I can observe and make meaningful in my life. And so I really like that wheel. And finally, the last one that I chose, again, not the last one that I chose, but the last one that I will show, is the Wheel of Fortune from another deck that I haven't had in my collection as long as some of the others, but is really coming up a lot in this top tarot trumps, which is interesting. And that is the Tarot for the Great Outdoors. And this one depicts Yellowstone National Park. So all of the majors depict a particular United States national park, and they name it in very small font above the title. I really like the imagery of the compass, again, for a Wheel of Fortune card. The compass speaks to navigation and orientation and how we orient ourselves within a world and a social context and a kind of trajectory of a life. And I that's a theme that I'm quite interested in, and I think that the Wheel of Fortune can speak to in really interesting ways. I like, of course, the inclusion of the landscape and all of these different animals, that live in this park. And I think that for a nature-based, outdoor-themed deck, that the compass as a choice for the Wheel of Fortune just makes such good sense to me. I think it's a really clever, and wise depiction to have chosen. So I really like this Wheel of Fortune as well. So I feel like looking at all of these wheels, and maybe for a lot of the majors, there's always some themes that seem to come up in making these top tarot trumps videos. And one of the things that I'm enjoying the most about this, aside from just going through all of my decks and making a huge mess and getting out the cards and playing with them, is that when I go through and find these top cards for whatever major it is, some things really surprise me, and some themes tend to emerge that, tell me something about what's important to me in this particular card that maybe I hadn't formally articulated or hadn't, really put words to, but clearly there's certain things that I'm drawn to, right, in these different majors. And definitely I feel like in all of these, perhaps in different ways, it is how we can exercise freedom and agency in a context in which, fortune may not be within our control. Certainly lots of things are not going to be within our control in the wheel, but this doesn't mean giving up agency, right? And I also like wheels of fortune that depict natural cycles, the cycles of nature, the cycles of the moon, these kinds of natural rhythms that we can work more or less with in navigating the world. So that is my top tarot trumps for the wheel. I will see you again in a couple of weeks for the next major. Thanks so much for watching. And if you have any favorite wheels of fortune or things that you look for in a Wheel of Fortune card or really like to see, do tell me in the comments down below. I'll see you soon. Bye.